All right. It is 6:30, so we're going to go ahead and get started. And camera angle's a little bit different this week, having a little video challenges. So sorry, but you just get to see a different part of the kitchen. So welcome everybody. Tonight is Cooking with Plants, our 7th class in this monthly free series. We're talking about unique vegetables and ways to use them. This is part 1. So if you like what you hear, come back next month for part 2. We'll talk about some other interesting and unique veggies. I am Kelly Wilson. I'm a registered dietitian nutritionist with the lifestyle medicine team here at Trinity Health Ann Arbor. I'm also board certified in lifestyle medicine. And if you haven't been with us for the class series and are unfamiliar with what lifestyle medicine means, lifestyle medicine is just a specialty within the field of medicine that focuses on chronic disease treatment, reversal, and prevention through 6 key pillars. Those pillars are a whole food, plant-forward dietary pattern, kind of like the recipes that we're covering tonight and in all of our other classes, moving your body in ways that feel good for you, stress reduction, social connection, so positive relationships, avoiding risky substances, and then restorative, restful sleep. So in our practice at Trinity Health Ann Arbor, we take all of those 6 pillars. They're all evidence-based, and we work with patients one-on-one and in a variety of settings like these classes or our intensive class series to help them apply those concepts to their everyday lives. I also have some training in culinary genomics, which is just a fancy way of saying, how cooking and food influence our genes. I was an organic farmer for a handful of years and have some training in that world. So I kind of wear that hat when I'm teaching these classes as well. And I really am excited about this class series and getting to spend this time with you because I really think anybody can cook. I think so many people are intimidated by cooking, but cooking doesn't have to be complicated. You can make really tasty food with really basic, fresh ingredients, and it doesn't have to be expensive or very time consuming. So hopefully some of the recipes we've already gone through and some of the recipes that we're going to cover tonight will help prove that point to you and inspire you to add some more of these plant-forward foods to your plate. I'm not the only one in our lifestyle medicine department. All the smiling faces on your screen are the rest of our team. I've got Lisa McDowell here with me tonight, kind of helping hand me things. And then Abby is on the behind the scenes answering any questions that come through the chat. I should have mentioned at the start, you are muted and your videos are off. But if you have questions and you want to interact, please put those questions in the chat in the Q&A, and Abby will answer them either herself or interrupt me and ask me during class. And if we don't get to all of the questions, I will email folks a response to the questions that you asked. Closed captioning is something that folks also have expressed interest in. So you can go up to the 3 dots at the top of your screen where it says more, go to language options, and then if you click closed captioning, it'll turn those on for you, and you should immediately see text across the screen. If you have any technical difficulties, lifestyle medicine at trinity-health.org. Abby will be monitoring that and can answer any questions for you. So like I mentioned, this is class 7 in our free monthly series. If you have not had the opportunity to join us for other classes, or you just want to go back and watch the recordings of previous classes, scan that QR code that's on your screen. So open up your photo app on your phone, hold it up to the QR code. It should take you directly to the website, and you should be able to watch those videos and also register for future classes if you've only registered for this one. And like I said, 2-part series. So next month is the second part of our unique veggie series. Today's class, we have a special guest. Laura from the farm at Trinity Health Ann Arbor is going to tell you a little bit about the farm because they shared so much of the beautiful produce that we're going to be cooking with tonight, and they've got fabulous programs, which she will tell you all about. Our veggies that we're going to be focusing on, we've got 4 recipes and we're focusing on 4 different vegetables. We've got cabbage, chard, fennel, and kohlrabi. So we'll do 4 easy recipes with all of those. With that, before we get to cooking, I'll pass it off to Laura so she can tell you a little bit about the farm and all the wonderful work that they do.
Thank you, Kelly. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. Good evening, everybody. It's a nice evening outside. I hope it is where you are too. I am the education coordinator at the farm at Trinity Health Ann Arbor. And I wake up every morning with gratitude that I get to work at a place where I get to go have fun outside and inside with wonderful people, really focusing on engaging people around food, growing health in our community, and building connections from our bodies to food, and also within our community as well. So we have a farm at our hospital, and our farm is in its 12th year now. So it's in junior high, I guess, at this point. We had a wonderful group of people who started the farm years ago. There were a lot of conversations going on back in 2009 and thereabouts about how do we as a hospital do the best job that we can to feed our patients and to feed the staff and families that are visiting our cafeteria. And also, how much of that food can we potentially grow here? We have a very large, if not the largest, North American hospital campus. And there's a lot of open space here, which is not something you hear about at very many hospitals. And so conversation turned to, well, what if we grew food here at the hospital? And what if we fed patients healthy food instead of cheeseburgers and fries? And so over a process of a few years, the deep fat fryers were ripped out of the cafeteria and replaced with some really, really good fresh options for sandwiches and build your own salads and daily specials that are delightful. And instead of growing all the food that the hospital needs, because the hospital is pretty big and the farm is pretty small, what we do instead really is meet people where they are and engage with them on their path to better health. And we're in this wonderful location here at the hospital where we have hoop houses and we have fields where we're growing outside as well. I want to say we're on like what, 2 acres? At least I did math, and so we have the advantage of not having to pay rent, and we can grow all that food. And where does the food go? It's a great question. If you look at this slide, you see there's 2 pictures there. Ann Arbor farm on the left with the clouds breaking through the sky, absolutely beautiful. We have a second location up at our hospital in Oakland County at Pontiac. And at both hospitals, most of the food that gets grown goes through our farmers markets and gets donated in a program we call Produce to Patients. So our farmers market in the Ann Arbor Hospital runs every Wednesday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. We do occasionally take a break in the dead of winter, but for the most part, we're there.
And the public can come to that.
The public can absolutely come. All you do is come inside the main hospital entrance and you'll see us out there. And so we've got our own produce for sale there. And then we also donate produce to our Produce to Patients program. So we have a lot of outpatient clinics here at the Ann Arbor campus where doctors and caregivers have partnered with us to provide fresh produce to patients. And so if you come in and visit your cardiologist, you can have a conversation with them about like what healthy heart eating looks like. And oh, look, we have a bundle of greens here for you. And here's some recipes. Just take these right home with you and get started on your path to better health yourself. It's good. So we have 2 farms currently there. Our biggest program is our farm share. I don't know if any of you have heard of CSA before, Community Supported Agriculture. So what we're doing with our farm share is we're not really putting a whole lot of our produce in it because we don't want to compete with local farmers. We want to support our local farmers. And so what we do is we have folks sign up for the farm share. You can join for 1 season or all 3 seasons with a season pass. And then once a week, you get to come to the farm and pick up either in person on Wednesdays from 3 to 6 p.m., or you can swing by any time during our pickup window that week and grab a pre-packed box at a time that's convenient for you. And what you'll find inside is about 6 to 8 items that we have purchased from other local farms. So we're trying to support our local farm community and put money back into their pockets. And in 2022, like I just found out this stat, like almost $300,000 was raised for local farms in our area, most of which are within 20 miles of our farm and our hospital right here. So that makes me feel really good that we're supporting the local farm and food community in that way. The Farm Share is a really great program. We are full for the summer. Springs are obviously over, but we do have spots available for the fall. So I'll show you our website in a minute, but you can go check that out. We do have some assistance for Farm Share available. I know there's a waiting list at this point, but it's a great program, and it's 12 weeks per season, and fall is going to be really great. Farm production. So how do we do the things that we do at the farm? We have one farmer, and it's not me. People are like, oh, are you in charge of the farm? I'm like, no, absolutely not. I run the education program. I get to do the fun stuff. But we get some assistance from some wonderful folks who come and volunteer with us, some of them every week, who come into the hoop houses and in the fields with our farmer Will and work with him to make sure all the food gets grown. And it's really, really fantastic that way. There are volunteer positions available. Again, check our website if you have the inclination and the time. The education program is the part that I run at the farm. And so I have summer camps, and there are spots available. We have farm to table summer camps next week. There's a morning session for ages 4 to 7. There's an afternoon session for ages 6 to 10. And then the last day of July and into the first week of August, we have more of an ecology-based camp called Farm, Field, and Forest that's available. Again, if you go to your website, there's information there. I do have scholarship funding available if anyone is in need. So help me spread the word on that if you can. And there's our website, stjoesfarm.org. It should have all the information you need about all of our wonderful programs. The farm is open. We kind of do a 9 to 5, Monday through Saturday kind of thing. So if you are near our campus and want to swing by, we're in the southeast corner of the campus. You'll see signs pointing you to the farm. We like visitors, and we like for people to come wander around and get to know us a little bit. So all kinds of good stuff going at the farm. Thank you again, Kelly, for having me.
Thank you so much for coming. We love the farm. We love your beautiful produce, and are so excited by all the good work that you're doing. So thanks for sharing some of your time with us.
Absolutely. Have a good class.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Just so everybody knows too, on our class website, I will link the farm's website. I'll link the Farm Share information and the farm camp information. So if you can either go directly to the farm's website or find it there as well. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen here so we can go ahead and get cooking. I'm really excited about tonight's class. I love all of the vegetables that we're going to be highlighting and featuring, and I hope that these recipes inspire you to enjoy them as much as I do. Bye, Laura. So our first recipe, we're going to do a really basic sauteed chard. So this is Swiss chard. You may have seen it in your grocery store or your farmer's market. It's sometimes referred to as silver beet or just plain old chard. We're going to saute one bunch of it. So chard, just like most dark leafy greens, is really high in fiber and magnesium. So you're getting good nutrition from eating these greens. Magnesium, super valuable as a cofactor in a lot of different reactions in our body that help with detoxification. It helps with blood sugar regulation, blood pressure regulation. So good bang for your buck ingredient chard. So to do some basic sauteed chard, what we're going to do is we're going to remove the stem, which is kind of crunchy like celery, from the delicate leaves, because we want to saute those first, because they're going to be a little tougher and take a little bit longer to cook. We're going to add the chard stems to some onion. So we'll chop up some onion. We've got some garlic, lemon juice. That's kind of what we're working with here. So to start, we'll separate the stems from the leaves. You can do a couple of different ways. You can just rip, probably the easiest. And I'm going to stack the leaves up in a pile once I rip these off. Once we rip everything, I'll move my camera down to the cutting board so you can see what we're doing. You could also take a knife and slice on either side of the stem and pull it out that way. You don't have to be perfect. If you leave some of the smaller bits of stem in there, that's fine too. You just want to get the thicker bits out. Okay, one more. And you see all these beautiful colors. This is just a really fun, visually appealing dish to eat as well. Okay, so moving my camera down to the cutting board so you can see. I've got my chard stems here. And I've got my chef's knife here. And remember, I'm pinching between my thumb and my forefinger, wrapping my 3 other fingers around the handle so it got nice and stable. And then you can see the ends of the chard. Let's see, there. I don't know if there's it go is in focus. Are just a little raggedy and kind of a little dried out. It's not a problem. We just are going to trim that off and set those little bits aside. And then I'm going to gather this bunch together and I'm just going to kind of go down and get uniform sized pieces all the way down here. All right, and then I did a little bit of prep work before class, so we've got some already chopped up. We're using about 2 bunches of chard from the farm, which is probably about equivalent to 3 or 4 if you were to get a bunch from Meijer. So buying your chard bunches from the farm is actually a really good deal because you get a lot more for what you pay for. And next, because we're going to saute these together, we'll work on our onion. So we're going to 1 regular onion. I know we've cut them before in class, but in case folks haven't joined us before, I'm taking the root end and I'm placing that on the cutting board, slicing through the center, and then I'm just ripping off the papery outer layer. So until I get what looks like that. Oh, and you know what there? That light's probably helpful for you to see a little bit better. Onions are a really good source of quercetin, which is a powerful antioxidant. And the good thing about quercetin is, unlike some of our other phytonutrients or polyphenols, it can withstand some cooking. So it actually will hold up in our sauteing. So now what I'm doing, I trimmed off the stem end, and onions, if you can see, let's see, a little lighting makes it a little hard. There you go. You can kind of see the stripes going across the onion. I'm going to use those as guidelines to make about evenly spaced slices. I'm slicing almost through to the root tip, not quite all the way through, so that the onion will still hold together. And if you notice, I'm holding the onion with my hand that's not holding the knife and making a kind of C shape or like a claw shape. And this is keeping my fingertips safe and out of the way of the knife while still allowing me to hold on to the onion firmly. Okay, now I'm going to make cuts the opposite direction. And you'll see we get nice, really beautiful, evenly cut pieces of onion pretty painlessly. And I'm pretty happy because, maybe I'm speaking too soon, but this onion is not making me cry, which it usually does. Oh, and there, this is starting to get me a little bit now. All right, I'm going to warm up my pan here. So if you see, let's see, I'll turn my camera on. For the stove, you should be seeing the stove top now. Just warming up a skillet. This is a 12-inch skillet. Just going to get that warm a little bit. Make sure I turn on the right one. Add a little bit of olive oil. If you're looking to avoid oil because of heart health or some other health reasons, you can definitely do a few tablespoons of water or low sodium veggie broth in here, and that will work just fine and be more like a water saute or steam. All right, so adding these onions in here, we're going to let these cook until they get translucent. So it might take like 3 to 5 minutes. I've turned it up on high until this gets the skillet gets up to temperature, and then I'm going to probably turn it down to medium. So we'll just let that do its thing for right now. And next we've got our chard leaves. So we just want to stack our chard leaves up into a pile. So I'm back over at the cutting board. the stovetop looks blurry to me. Is it blurry to everybody else? No? Okay, it's not blurry. Great. I'm glad that is true. Okay, so I'm stacking all the charred leaves up and I'm just gonna roll them kind of like if you were making a little burrito. Okay, and then I'm going to go down the burrito and thinly slice. I think we've done this with some herbs. And when you thinly slice like this, it's called chiffonading. Just gets it into bite-sized pieces. We're going to go ahead and chop that up like that. And then I'm going to add the chard into my bowl. So here we've got all of these beautiful greens ready to go once our onion is good. While our onion cooks, let's talk about selecting and storing chard. So chard's in season right now. It's a really, really delicious green in basic applications like this, just a quick saute. It's really wonderful in soups and stews. It's really great wilted on top of pizzas. You can find baby Swiss chard in a lot of salad mixes in the store or at the farmer's market. It's really wonderful and delicious that way. I hear our onions, so we're just gonna get that going. A little stir. All right. And if you're at the farmer's market, if you're at the grocery store and you're looking for your perfect bunch of chard, you're just gonna want to make sure that it is bright green. The stems are firm and crisp, and there's not a lot of yellowing to that. Once you purchase that chard, it's good in your fridge for a few days, up to a week, as long as you're storing it in a plastic bag. And in your crisper drawer would be even better. So our onion, we're gonna go back over to our onions. They're cooking a little bit. Okay, so now I've got this at medium. And you can see the color of the onions has changed. They were pretty white, and now they're starting to turn almost a little yellow and glassy. So now I'm going to add in my Swiss chard stems. And again, this is just from 2 bunches. They were really big bunches that the farm generously provided. So it might be equivalent to like 3 or 4 bunches at the grocery store. And I don't think I'm going to use all of it actually. Then I'm going to add, I've got a pinch of salt. So just kosher salt. Again, if you can omit if you're looking to reduce your sodium for whatever reason. Just give that a quick stir. And I'm going to throw in, I've got 1 clove of minced garlic that's going in here as well. And if you remember from previous classes, that minced garlic, also really powerful antioxidant, anti-inflammatory activity, anti-cancer activity, thanks to a compound called allicin, which does need time to develop. So it's best when you're doing your preparation to chop up your garlic and let it sit for about 10 minutes. Okay. So that is starting to cook. So typically I would let this go for probably another 2 to 5 minutes. But because I want to make sure we have time for other recipes, I'm just going to go ahead and move on to that next step, which is adding in our greens. And so just adding our chopped greens right on top of this dish. I've got some tongs. These are silicone tipped metal tongs. And I really like the tongs for cooking greens because they're kind of big and bulky. Even when you chop them up, until they start wilting down. And this just allows you to move the greens around a lot better, a lot more effectively without flinging them all over the place like I sometimes do when I'm just using a regular spatula. So you just kind of move them around until they start wilting down a little bit, and then add in the rest of your greens a little bit at a time. Okay. Add just a little bit more salt. Chard is also another fun health fact about it. It is a source of betalain, with chard and beets, which chard is actually in the same family. It's technically the same plant as beets, Beta vulgaris. And chard and beets have that betalain compound, which is potent anti-cancer, anti-inflammatory compound. So chard's in the same family as beets. It's in the same family as, believe it or not, spinach and amaranth and quinoa. And if you've ever come across the very prolific, very common weed called lamb's quarter, it is a relative of that weed as well. And lamb's quarter is actually edible. Actually a pretty delicious wild wheat. Okay, so you can see the chard has cooked down quite a lot. So we had a giant bowl, and very much like spinach, right? It reduces very significantly. Okay, so we're just gonna let that cook a little bit longer. And while that's cooking, I've got a little bit of lemon juice. If you remember from our flavors class, acid, which this lemon juice is, helps balance out bitter. Some people experience the flavor of chard to be a little bitter. So adding a little bit of lemon juice at the end of cooking here, I've got about 2 tablespoons, is really helpful in kind of cutting down some of that bitterness. If it still tastes a little bitter to you, sweeten it with a little bit of maple syrup, like a tablespoon or so of maple syrup, or a little bit of honey. And that sweetness can also cut through some of that bitterness. Okay, so we're done there with our chard. We're going to set it aside because we're going to use it in our next recipe. But look how beautiful and colorful that is. And I promise you, it's also very, very tasty. Yeah, I'll keep that. I can trade you this and this. And for the fabulous. Thank you. Okay. Our next recipe, we're going to make a fennel dish. So if you're not familiar with fennel, this is right here on the cutting board what fennel looks like. So it is a member of the carrot family, believe it or not, related to the Queen's Anne's lace that you see out in wild fields. We eat both the bulb, which is this white part down here. These fronds are often used like an herb. And we also eat the seed. The seed comes from a different plant often than the one that we eat as a vegetable, which is this bulb portion. So that's what we're going to be working with tonight. So this, I just wanted you to see, it grows upright like this. I'm holding it sideways because that's the camera angle that I've got access to right now. But big, beautiful, fragrant. It has kind of an anise or mild licorice flavor. It's not too intense, and that intensity actually diminishes with cooking. So first and foremost, what we are going to do, I've got some whisk. Our fennel recipe is a soca recipe, and soca is a Italian, excuse me, actually it's French, flatbread that's made from chickpea flour. So we're going to mix up that. The chickpea flour needs some time to hydrate first. So we're going to mix that up first. So here we go. We've got our chickpea flour right here. I got mine from Meijer. You can get it from a lot of places. It's literally just ground up dried chickpeas. I've got 1/2 cup in here, and then I've got 1/2 cup of water and 1 tablespoon of olive oil. And just going to mix that up until it gets nice. Perfect. Okay. So we're going to let that batter hydrate. I might add a little bit more water once we get there. Needs to be kind of like a pourable batter, but we'll set that aside for right now. Okay. So next, what we're going to do is we've got 1 can of chickpeas that have been drained and rinsed. And we've got a little bit of olive oil and some salt and some garlic. Here we go. Got some garlic minced up here. We're going to add that into our skillet. So I've got my skillet going here. Add my oil to that skillet. Again, you can omit that if you like. I'm going to add in my garlic. And I'm just cooking this garlic for a short amount of time until it is fragrant. So 30 seconds to a minute at most. I wish you could smell this. It smells so good. Smelling really good. So now we're going to add in our chickpeas. And these chickpeas, they're already cooked. You don't have to cook them, right? They're in a can. But what we're doing is we're just infusing them with some flavor, and we're browning them a little bit. So I'm just going to let them go. We're going to cook them for about 5 minutes. While those cook, what we are going to do is thinly slice our fennel. And work on our kale. We've got a bunch of lacinato kale right here. So our fennel, the part that we're using today is the bulb. Okay. So when we're working with the bulb, you just trim off this root end, just like so. And we want some nice thin slices. So I'm gonna pull these little sections apart. And we're just going to go down and make nice thin slices and set them into our bowl. You could also, if you didn't want to do slices like this, you could use a mandolin, which looks like this. So this is a Ben Reiner Japanese style mandolin, and it makes nice thin cuts. You can see very thin and easy. You just want to be really careful if you are going to use something like this. I cut myself earlier today on this tool. They're fabulous and wonderful. You just don't want to multitask while you're trying to use them. You want to be very mindful. Okay, I'm stirring up those chickpeas a little bit. Seeing a little bit of browning on them. Put the fennel that we did chop into our bowl here. Okay. And keep on going. So fennel, like I said, we can eat all the different parts of the plant, which is pretty cool. If you're selecting fennel, you just want to look for fennel that has fronds that are not super droopy. The bulb is firm and it doesn't have a lot of soft spots or blemishes on it. Right now is fennel season. It also is pretty common at farmers markets and in CSA boxes in the fall. To store it, you just want to cut those fronds off. So like I showed you, we just have this kind of bulb with the stems. You want to cut those fronds off, store them in a plastic bag with maybe a paper towel to absorb some moisture, and you'd use them as an herb or garnish on a dish to add a little bit of that anise kind of flavor. And then the bulb you would just store separately in a plastic bag as well. And it'll keep for a few days to a week. Stir our chickpeas again. Good, our garlic's browning. From a health side of things, fennel is really, I guess, a good source of fiber, like all other fruits and veggies. It's got a compound called anthanol. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, so I apologize if I am mispronouncing. Then that's what gives it its anise flavor. And this compound's actually one of the inflammation mediators that are present in fennel. Fennel is a kind of superfood, if you will, for helping us master inflammation and turn off the NF kappa beta pathways, or decrease some of those inflammation pathways. All right, I'm going to add a little bit of salt to here. We have got our fennel all up in our bowl here. Okay. So fennel also has some of that quercetin that we talked about. Another important phytonutrient. All right, so now we're going to destem our kale. If you can see, I'm taking the stem in one hand, pulling with my other hand. And I'm setting aside those stems. Stems are great to use as in your veggie stock, or you could cut them up and saute them as you would with your celery and onions and carrots, kind of in your mirepoix or your base of different veggies. Okay, and we're gonna roll the kale just like we did with the chard. We're gonna make nice thin slices. This is lacinato kale or dinosaur kale or Tuscan kale. You can use any type of kale that you want. It does not have to be this kind. This is what the farm had, and it's just such a beautiful, deep, rich blue-green. I also thought it would look really pretty. Because remember, like, we eat with our eyes just as much as we eat with our taste buds. So having our food look good can make us desire to eat it even more. Okay, so it's in kind of relatively bite-sized pieces. I'm going to add it to our skillet here. Turn the heat back up. And I'm going to borrow my tongs from the chard. Give that a little stir here, and we're just going to wilt that. Cook that until it gets wilted. So let that go for a little bit there. Set aside my stems. And while that is cooking, I am going to get the water. Just want to add a little bit more. I want to thin out this batter a little bit so that it's actually kind of pourable. So just thinned out a little bit, do a little bit more. So this might end up being about like 3/4 cup of water instead of that half cup of water, instead of that 1-to-1 ratio. That feels a little bit better to me, so it's a little bit runnier. Actually more like a pancake kind of batter, which is kind of what Soka is. It's basically a pancake. Okay, so while that is cooking, oh, I forgot to add this. This is za'atar spice. So it's got a bunch of different herbs, sumac, and some sesame seeds. We're gonna put that in here, our kale and our chickpea dish. Gonna add some nice, the sumac adds some nice brightness and lemony flavor to this. And again, I think that pairs really nicely with what some people kind of experience as a little bitterness in this kale, but I tasted this kale raw and it is not bitter. It's really, really delicious. That's actually looking pretty close to where I want it. So I think we're going to take that off. And we've got our bowl of fennel right here. We're just going to dump all of this into that bowl. And this is going to be a topping for our soka. All right, so that over here. We've got our soka ready to go. My pan is on the stove. I'm going to add just a touch, just a tiny touch. This is a nonstick pan, so I don't really need it, but just to be safe, I want to make sure we've got a little bit of oil in there. And I'm going to add about half the batter right to the center of the pan. And if you can, I don't know if you can hear, but the pan is sizzling. So, and I'm going to thin out the batter a little bit so it's even, kind of makes sort of around. Whoops, fill in that hole a little bit. Pancake. So it's sizzling. That's how I know that this skillet is hot enough and ready for my pancake. All right, so we're gonna let that cook a little bit, 2-3 minutes until it's nice and brown on the bottom. We'll flip it over and then we'll be ready to top our dish. While that is going, what I am going to do is use our measuring cup from before, and we're just making a very basic dressing. So this is tahini, ground up sesame seeds, which are actually a pretty high source of calcium, plant-based calcium. So we're adding those. This is about a quarter cup. I've got a couple tablespoons of olive oil that are going in here, extra virgin cold pressed, a couple tablespoons of lemon juice, and a couple tablespoons of water. And I am mixing that together in here. And I'm just mixing until it's kind of creamy and emulsified. And this is going to be a nice drizzle dressing for on top of our dish. You can see very nice and creamy. You can also use this just as a veggie dip as well. Okay, our pancake looks like it's browning around the edges. Oh yeah, maybe a little bit hotter than I want it to be. Looks like I probably have room for my next one. So just gonna put that in here. That aside, and almost done. It's good. So our final product, while that one is cooking, we've got our soka. We've got our beautiful fennel, kale, and chickpea. You could also take this chard and do the exact same thing with. And then we've got our tahini dressing. It's going right on top. Okay, and you could do some chopped fresh greens. You can put some of those fennel fronds on top to also really make that pop. That's going to be very delicious, very tasty, high protein and fiber from your chickpeas as well. Pancake there. All right, we're going to set that aside and move on to our next recipe. So our next recipe is a creamy slaw. This is going to be using kale and some cabbage as well. So we've got, get my ingredients all around for us. Did a little bit of prep work already for us. So we've got, we've got about 5 cups of the lacinato kale, raw shredded. We've got 1 fennel frond, thinly sliced with a mandolin, 2 green scallions, thinly sliced, and then this, the recipe called for 1 carrot matchsticked, and the grocery store has these lovely shredded, almost matchstick size, pre-bagged pieces. I'm a huge fan of taking shortcuts, and that's exactly what we're doing. So I used these instead. Okay. And then we've also got 2 tablespoons of sunflower seeds, which are really high in selenium, which is a really important cofactor for detoxification, really important for thyroid function as well, really important for methylation processes. So we're going to mix all these things together in a second. Before we do that, our main ingredient here is cabbage. So cabbage, this is a flat style of cabbage. You can get cabbage comes in all sorts of different shapes and sizes. I peeled off the outer layers. When you're looking for cabbage, you want to look for a head that is bright green or bright red, firm. It feels really heavy for its size. That means its leaves are nicely densely packed. And then when you store it in the fridge, just put it in some plastic. It'll store for a really long time in your fridge. If the outer leaves start to yellow at all, just peel those off until you get to the bright green leaves on the inside. We're only going to use a small portion of this cabbage. So what I'm going to do, because the top is flat and that feels a little bit more stable, I'm going to put the top down, and we're going for maybe a quarter of this. So put this half again. And then cabbage has this core, and that's really tough, and we want to get rid of that. So we're going to put that out, set that aside. And then this is a slaw recipe, and so you want to think about the size of the pieces that you want in your mouth when you're eating this. And so I like, thin slices. You might like a little bit more texture, but I'm gonna cut them pretty thin like this, and then go back and chop these long strands into more bite-sized pieces. So cabbage, we've talked about sulforaphane before. Cabbage is an all cruciferous vegetable. So vegetables in the cabbage, the kale that's in this dish, broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, in that family of vegetables, mustard actually is included in that too. They're all really high in sulforaphane, and sulforaphane kind of turns on our anti-inflammatory fire hose or antioxidant fire hose pathways inside our body. So it's very helpful for disease prevention and reversal, but it is only really available in raw cruciferous vegetables. When we cook for a long period of time at high heat, it kind of gets rid of that sulforaphane. So one of the ways we can make sure we get a lot of good sulforaphane is by eating raw brassicas. And in order to have the sulforaphane be at its best and most robust level, cutting it and then letting it sit for a little while to let the enzyme murinase do its work can help that sulforaphane develop. If we let it sit for up to 60 minutes, it actually can withstand a little bit of cooking, about 2 to 3 minutes, light saute or light steam, and we'll still retain that sulforaphane. All right, so now raw ingredients all here in this bowl. Throwing in my seeds, and we are going to mix up our dressing. So for this creamy slaw dressing, I've got 2 tablespoons of Dijon mustard. I've got a teaspoon of Ume plum vinegar. Ume plum vinegar, this is the bottle right here. It's a really common ingredient in a lot of Japanese dishes and cooking. It adds a little bit of brightness to this dish, and it is a fermented food product, so you're getting some added benefits there. We got some garlic minced up. That's about 1 clove. We've got 2 tablespoons of water. The recipe calls for 2 tablespoons of cashew butter. Cashew butter is really expensive, so I opted to go for almond butter, which was a little bit cheaper. You could also use a peanut butter here if you wanted to. Got a couple tablespoons of olive oil. And this is a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar. Okay. We are mix that together. Yeah, so you could use a little bit of peanut butter. You could make your own cashew butter too if you wanted to, if you have raw cashews at home and you have a good food processor, you could add those to your food processor and just continue processing until you get creamy butter. So there's our dressing. We're gonna add that right on top here. I've got some tongs and we are just tossing until this is lightly coated. Okay. And if you find that you have more veggies than, dressing, you can make a little bit more, or, I usually when I'm adding the dressing, like to add just a little bit at a time and then toss to kind of see where I'm at so that my slaw is not drowning. I like it to be lightly dressed, so I'm getting good flavor, but it's not soggy. So you're still getting the benefit of the different textures and the crunch. So look how beautiful that is. Look at all the colors that are in there. It smells so good. We're getting a little bit of sweetness and hints of brightness from that dressing that we just made. Okay, so there we go. There's our slaw. That's our creamy cabbage and fennel slaw. Set that aside, and we've got one last recipe. We're going to be focusing on kohlrabi. And I have to say, looking at what time it is, we might go a couple minutes over. So if you're okay to stay with me, I welcome you to stay with me until we're done, but I totally understand if you need to leave for other commitments for the evening. All right, so our last recipe is from Vegetable Kingdom by Bryant Terry, who is a really prominent African-American chef in the vegan and plant-based community. This is carrot and kohlrabi salad from that cookbook. So we've got kohlrabi, if anybody has seen that before. This is what the kohlrabi looks like. So this is also a member of the Brassica family. Again, cabbage and kale are in that same family. We eat both the leaves are edible and this bulb, which is a swollen stem, has a very similar flavor to broccoli stem, but it's not as tough. It's sweeter, much more mild and tender. Wonderful raw, wonderful roasted, mashed with potatoes is also really, really good. And it's a fabulous veggie for just dips and things. This is a purple kohlrabi. You may also see green. This is a spring or early season kohlrabi, so it's really tender. The skin is really thin. There are storage types of kohlrabi, which are often almost the size of cabbages, and they might be a little bit more fibrous, and those are the ones that really withstand braising or roasting or mashing really well. I really love using these fresh, tender babies in raw applications, so that's what we're doing tonight. This is what that kohlrabi looks like with the leaves trimmed and peeled. You can see it's kind of green and white on the inside. We're going to trim off both the stem ends and the root ends. Cut it in half. I'm going to cut it in quarters, actually, I think. And then we're just cutting thin slices. Again, you're going to eat this raw, so you want it to be about the thickness, whatever thickness you would enjoy eating. Remember, texture influences our experience of flavor. In this application, I think thin slices lend themselves really, really well to this dish. So you can see this is about the thickness of the kohlrabi pieces. And you can cut them to whatever size. If you want smaller pieces, great. If you want bigger pieces, great. Make it your own. This is your dish and your culinary adventure. And that goes with any of these recipes, any of the dressings or things that we made. Swap in and out the ingredients that you like. In that chickpea recipe, you could use curry powder instead of za'atar. You could use chili spices. You know, choose your own adventure. Okay, so we've got about 3 of those kohlrabis that are peeled and sliced in here very nicely and thinly. Again, you could use a mandolin for this application if you wanted. You would just be pressing down on the mandolin like this to make thin slices. You would just also want to be very, very mindful of your fingers. We've got about a pound of carrots that were ribboned. And how I did this is I took my favorite vegetable peeler, which is a Y-shaped vegetable peeler. And just like you were peeling the carrot, just go around and make some nice ribbons. Okay, so it just is a fun, different texture, a little bit lighter because it's thinner. We're going to add those in here. And then we are going to make a dressing. So I've got a 1/2 cup here of unseasoned, which means unsweetened rice vinegar. So this is just a different type of vinegar that you can make basic dressings with. We've got a couple tablespoons of lime juice. We're gonna do like a teaspoon or so, so about that much of minced garlic, excuse me, minced ginger, not garlic. I've got a tablespoon of maple syrup, which will be a helpful balance to that acid. Add a pinch of salt. And the recipe calls for shallots. I didn't have shallots, I had onions, so I swapped in some onions. We've got about 2 tablespoons of minced onion that's going here in this dish as well. We are going to give that a little stir until the salt's dissolved and all of those ingredients are evenly incorporated. And I forgot, I've got 1 clove of garlic minced as well that's going in here. You could use garlic powder, you could use ginger powder. You don't have to use fresh. Fresh just adds slightly different, more robust flavor, especially with the ginger. I think it adds a sweeter quality than the powdered. So now we've got our bowl here ready to go with our dressing. We're just pouring this across. And we've got another set of our handy dandy tongs. I think we've used them in every recipe tonight. So if you don't have some, maybe now's the time to get yourself a pair. And I'm just tossing this until the dressing is evenly coating everything. This is a really nice side dish because of all of the acid to balance out any heavy flavors or like more fatty meal. That acid can kind of cut through and balance out that. You could also use this as a sandwich topping, or you could throw this on top of any basic greens salad that you wanted to for some nice texture and flavor punch. I enjoy it just like this. The final touch, if you're okay with peanuts, and you could use any other nut too if you wanted to, just throw a little bit of those peanuts on there. You could throw some cilantro on here, would also be really nice and heighten the nutritional value with some potent bioactives. But again, really basic, really simple. And look at that, we finished with one minute to spare. Look at us go. So for hopefully exciting to you recipes that will make these veggies maybe a little bit more familiar and easy for you. They will all be on the website in a couple days, so you can look for them there, and I will email them out just like I do every month, so you can look for them there as well. there will be a survey in the email. So if you can make sure that my email address, kelly.wilson@trinity-health.org, is in your favorites, that you're accepting emails from it. It's not going to spam. I would appreciate that so that you get the class resources and you can make sure to fill out that survey. I'm going to pop the slideshow back up real quick just so I can show you the QR code for the website. And then you can, so that QR code that's on your screen right now, the recipes and resources will be on that website. So please make sure that you've got that saved at least. If you have any questions that weren't answered during class today, lifestylemedicine@trinityhealth.org, or you do receive emails from me, so please feel welcome to respond to those emails. And then just a plug for our Lifestyle Medicine Foundations class, which is coming up in September. This is a 7-week class where we don't just talk about nutrition like we do in these classes, but we talk about all of the pillars of lifestyle medicine and how you can apply those principles, those evidence-based guidelines into your everyday life. So if you're interested in learning more, you can email us at lifestylemedicine@trinityhealth.org or respond to the class summary email that I'll share in a few days, and I'm happy to get you more information. Thanks as always for being here and sharing your time with me. I really appreciate it. Hopefully you're feeling excited to try some of these new vegetables. And if you do, please email me and let me know what you tried and what you thought of it. And with that, I'll let you all go and have a wonderful rest of your evening. Take good care.